Hello and welcome to my easy to understand guide to Adore You by Harry Styles. This video is going to be particularly relevant for you if you are studying OCR GCSE Media Studies, as it is a set text on that specification from 2025 onwards. This video is going to focus in particular on media language, representation and audiences. The music video starts off quite moody, with the mise-en-scène being quite dark, rainy. We get the Scottish island, mountains, beach. And this kind of pathetic fallacy really helps to connote his emotional state at the time, being kind of quite depressed. And there's a big contrast here with the lyrics, because in the lyrics he sings about rainbow paradise, but what we're actually seeing is quite desaturated visuals. And this suggests that life without this person that he's singing about is quite depressing and sad and lonely.
Some audiences might interpret the lyric about rainbows to be a reference to LGBTQ+. There's been a lot of speculation about Harry Styles' sexuality, and he's never been entirely open about it. So this might encourage audiences to speculate a little bit about that. The lyrics here about strawberries add to the kind of fruit themes in a lot of Harry Styles' songs. You might be familiar with Watermelon Sugar, one of his other singles from the same album. So again, this might add a sense of familiarity and consistency and branding for the audience. It might also suggest that he's singing about the same person in the songs across his album, which adds a sense of enigma for the audience as they try and figure out who he's singing about.
We see Harry Styles struggling in the waves, poor Harry, and he's picking things up off the rocks. It makes him seem quite strong, quite brave, quite physically capable. But the use of the wide shots here and the loose framing still make him seem quite isolated and lonely. The title appears on the screen here in bright yellow, and this helps to engage an audience. The use of the word you in the title helps to feel like the audience is being directly addressed by this, and they might enjoy feeling as though Harry Styles really does adore them.
He refers here to a person by talking about sexy tanned skin and having drinks with this person, but again, not explicitly saying who, and also not explicitly gendering the person either. So it creates a little bit more enigma to the audience about who he might be singing to. In the pre-chorus and the chorus, Harry talks about things like, you don't have to say you love me and you don't have to say you're mine. So very much kind of suggesting that he doesn't mind if the other person doesn't reciprocate his love. He just wants to express his feelings for them. And this makes Harry seem quite selfless. It also suggests that he doesn't mind if the love is platonic or romantic or sexual, as long as he gets to spend time with this person.
We see different mise-en-scene here. The fisherman's baskets, for example, it makes it seem very working class and very down to earth. His bag breaks and his fish flops into the puddle, and that makes him seem quite unlucky. But the low angle shot of him picking up this poor fish and the eye line match to the fish, it makes him seem like a hero, as though he's rescuing this fish. He runs towards the girls here and they run away screaming. I'm not sure whether many girls run away screaming from Harry Styles, but I suppose it's this idea, it makes him seem again quite lonely and unloved. It creates a little bit of sympathy for him. There's some unusual shots here as well as he goes into a hairdresser's. It's quite dreary and old-fashioned, quite traditional looking. And he smiles at the women, and there's this kind of visual effect of a blinding smile. It's quite unusual, it's quite surreal, and it creates quite an odd narrative. And at this point we actually see physical changes, so the woman's hair has changed to a much more outlandish one. So it's this idea that he creates this change, he smiles and the world changes for him. It makes him seem quite powerful and almost supernatural. We see him eating fish flakes, which makes him seem quite comic and quite silly. And he sings to the fish, which again is quite comic, and it's quite unusual for a song about love to be directed at a fish. And when he wakes up, the fish is bigger, a lot bigger. And again, this is quite shocking, and it adds to the sort of supernatural, slightly strange, surreal feel of the video. We get some kind of slightly odd shots here with a boy exchanging a pot for a backpack. It's quite surreal because we can see the fish inside. He's walking on the cliff tops, which makes him seem quite outdoorsy and at home with nature. I mean, the aerial shots of the cliffs add to this element of escapism for the audience with the sea and the rocks. And that escapist fantasy is continued with the picnic, the romantic picnic that Harry has taken his fish in. So it's kind of a subverting typical romantic notions of a picnic, because we get tiny tacos, adds comedy, he hands the binoculars over to the fish. So it's definitely kind of quite tongue-in-cheek and silly. Harry puts on a vinyl record and he starts dancing, and the fish starts dancing too. And the music goes from non-diegetic to diegetic and back to non-diegetic again, which kind of adds this slight idea of playing with the idea of reality. We see Harry knitting in his bedroom, again kind of subverting typical ideas about masculinity here. He's quite caring, he seems quite crafty, and he's kind of knitting this kind of rainbow fish. And we see him in his pyjamas. Again, it's kind of quite comedy, quite an unusual representation of a man in a music video to see him in his kind of pyjamas. But I guess it will help the audience live out a little bit of their fantasies about seeing Harry Styles in his nightwear. We see the news on the TV about the fish, and in the morning the water has dried up in the bag. It kind of creates this idea that something is going on, something newsworthy, something big. And Harry, of course, is in his dressing gown and socks, which again is quite a quirky outfit. He's kind of known for being quite quirky in terms of his fashion in real life, so that ties in with this. And then he puts his fish in a tank on a bike, which is quite strange. And that's when we get this montage of odd scenes where there's an artist painting a scene that's just happening. In the hairdressers, there's women queuing in there to get their hair done in kind of crazy styles. So it's kind of slightly odd things happening in this village. And the fish is now in a giant tank and he's dragging around. And he sees this other fish being chopped up in the harbour, which adds this element of fear and again a little bit of comedy. Perhaps it's an idea, a message about animal cruelty, but perhaps it's also foreshadowing this idea that he doesn't want to lose this thing that he's fallen in love with. So the whole town helps him. It's the idea of teamwork and community coming together. And we get the sad face and the emotional goodbye as he says goodbye to the fish and kind of puts him into the sea. So perhaps this idea of freedom, letting somebody go that you love. You know, they say if you love someone, let them go. So, you know, perhaps playing with this idea of being trapped and being free.
Releasing the fish into the ocean might suggest that in relationships, you have to allow the other person to follow their path and to do what they need to do. And you shouldn't be controlling or try and trap them within the relationship. It might suggest that the actual relationship and spending time with them was what was important, the journey and the process of falling for them. But that inevitably, both people have to be happy. There's also a running theme of searching in the video. So we see Harry Styles with his binoculars looking out across the sea, which he also hands to the fish. We see a metal detector searching for treasure on the beach. And then later on, we see that same man searching for a particular address. So maybe there is a theme of searching for true love.
And the idea of lost love and not being able to settle down with the person that you want to settle down with might appeal to a lot of audiences and be familiar and relatable to them too.
Have a look at the representations of gender in the video as well. Men, apart from Harry Styles, are often seen as doing quite masculine, macho, strong, physical labour jobs like the fishermen within the village, etc. Whereas the women in the village are shown as doing typically more feminine jobs like working in the hairdressers, going to have the hair done, doing the cooking, and also more creative jobs like painting too. So this seems like a fairly traditional old-fashioned island, and Harry Styles is the one that is slightly different in terms of his attitudes towards gender in the video.
The music video does make more sense if you view the extended version as well, because then that adds a bit to the narrative and the characters. It adds to this idea of there's being a filmic narrative, which a lot of people like in music videos now, to see a sort of slightly longer version, but it gives you a bit more context about the characters and the story. So that was my very simple, easy to understand guide to the Harry Styles video Adore You. Don't forget to check out my channel for other videos that might be relevant for you. And if you would like a video that I don't already have, leave a little comment below and I'll see what I can do.